Bonjour. So I'm going to give you some simple advice to help your child learn French. Perhaps you've never learned French and you're not familiar with language learning and you do not know really how to help your child when they're going to start learning a language in high school. So I've taught French for many years in high school, and I've met many parents who asked, how can I best support my child? Now, the only thing is that often these conversations happen during parent-teacher interviews, which is usually well into term 2. And I think we need to discuss this before, because there's a few things that you can do from the very start to help your child have a good start in language learning. Now, first thing, everyone can learn a language. And for example, if your child speaks already a different language at home and then, English at school, and you might be afraid that a third language would have a negative impact on their studies. In fact, research shows that learning a language improves the knowledge of the previous languages. So that means that basically learning French is going to improve the level of English of your child. First year is really important. It's important because we learn the basics of the language. And when we say basics, we do not mean that it's simple. We mean that it's the fundamental things upon which everything else then is built upon, a bit like a ladder. So that's why I think it's really important to do it well from the very start. So, some of the advice. First of all, your child should work regularly. Ideally, every night 5 minutes, or every second 10 minutes, but have a schedule. Go over the lessons. Look at the notes that they've taken. Make sure that everything makes sense. If it doesn't, then they should write down the question and answer the teacher at the next lesson. Also, check your child's notebook. I mean, if you cannot read their notes, and if they cannot explain their notes to you, it probably means that using that notebook for their revisions or their learning is not very effective. So it's worth doing that. Now, also, and perhaps a bit more off-putting, certain things need to be learned by rote. Your child's going to learn things like être and avoir, which is to be and to have in French. Now think in English. In English, how many times do you use to be or to have in a conversation? You would not be able to have a conversation if each time you have to use it, you would have to think about it or look in a book. No, you need to know them. Well, it's going to be the same with French. So they are just things, you learn them. And then you move on. Also with the vocabulary, one thing that is a bit tricky in French is that we've got genders. So it's not enough to just learn the meaning of a word. You need to know also the spelling, but also the gender, because a lot of grammar rules will basically teach the child that we need to do agreements. Like if a noun is feminine, then the adjective that describes the noun needs to be feminine, and so on. So it will imply a lot of little changes in sentences to genders, and it's important to know them. Now, with the grammar, of course, as I said, it can be a little bit off-putting, but it's important to say to your child that the grammar is not the reason in itself to learn the language. The grammar is essential to the language, just like, the bones are essential to the body, or just like it's the rules of the game. So in other words, if you want to speak properly French, you need to know the grammar, just like if you want to become a very good basketball player, you probably need to know the rules of basketball. That's just exactly the same thing. But no one plays basketball for just the sake of learning the rules of basketball. It's the same in French. Also, sometimes some parents, think that the child is going to speak French very quickly. Well, hopefully, but, have realistic expectations. It's going to take them a little bit of time to be able to have a proper conversation in French and things like this. So be mindful not to put them in a situation like, you see a French movie and you go, oh, what's happening? Because it's going to be hard for them at the very start. Also, if you can make connections between French and your life, your daily life, things that you do, like, oh, did you see the news? This is happening in France. Or, oh, we're making a French recipes. Or, there's a French festival in town and you go to that festival. Making these connections will also help make the language something else than just an academic pursuit, but also something that's part of daily life in some ways, and also bring the culture with the language, which is also really important. Now, you can as well extend your children, so you can use some apps. There's some free apps like Duolingo, for example. You can even compete with your child on Duolingo, so that can be fun. You can use flashcards. You can use, of course, my YouTube channel, where you found this video anyway, and there's plenty of grammar rules. So just to conclude, if you show interest in your child's learning, if you encourage and support them, and you apply these little advice, I think they should have a very good start. And it's important to have a good start. And of course, if you have questions, well, don't hesitate to contact the teachers. Hein? Au revoir, bonne chance, bonne route, bon apprentissage.